Um, if Jamie comes, of course, she'll take over at that time. Okay, well, I'd like to call to order this meeting, the Administration Committee of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District. Holly, could you take the roll, please?
So today we're going to have Jen take the roll.
Jen, if you could take the roll, please.
Foltz.
Here.
And Mark Dolson.
Here.
All right.
And we'll note that Jamie is absent.
Okay, this time is allotted for public communications for items that are not on the agenda but within the purview of the district. Mr. Holloway, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. I guess I haven't come to, I can't remember when I came to an administration committee meeting, but I remember when they started. It was about 10 years ago. Margaret Bruce had gone up to the CSDA legislative days, which is about this time of year. It might be in May, but they have a weekend or so that they meet with legislators and you know, elected members of districts may go up there. So Margaret had gone up there and came back and was all excited about the CSDA legislative agenda. And that's kind of when this committee started, was to have a place to talk about things like that. So one of the things I wanted to say today was a couple of board meetings ago, I was trying to speak at the end of the meeting and Director Ackman interrupted me. And then she, later she apologized for interrupting me. And by doing that, I lost my train of thought. And I wasn't able to remember what I was actually trying to say. And I guess I just want everybody to understand that that is a risk if you interrupt people. And I think there is a culture of interruption among the board and also staff. Numerous times, board members interrupt each other, board members interrupt members of the public, staff interrupts members of the public. And I think if you read the board policy manual, whoever's chairing the meeting is supposed to defend the speaker. So whenever the chair recognizes a speaker, as Director Foltz just recognized me, it's the chair's duty to protect the speaker, no matter who it is. Once the speaker's been recognized by the chair, they need to be protected from interruptions. And I lost my train of thought that time. And I guess I sort of feel like I have a right to say what I was gonna say that I didn't get to say. And that is, in the order of business, number 9 is President's Report. To me, the president is just another director. There's a place for director reports, number 13D. So I don't really see why the president's report is separate from the director reports. It seems like it should just be another director's report. But the other thing is that there were some times last year when this number 9 is basically an unagendized item. Nobody knows what it's going to be. Under the Brown Act, there's supposed to be a description of each item, 20 words or something, to tell you what it's about. But if all it says is president's report, we don't know what that person is going to talk about. And as soon as the president starts speaking, some other board member might start speaking, and all of a sudden you've got a discussion of an unagendized item. So I think that this president's report should be stricken from your order of business, because I think it's an invitation to a Brown Act violation.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway. Is there anybody online? I'm not logged in right now, so.
The only person online is Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, this is.
All right. So I'll call on you twice. Is that the deal, Mark? Once here and once online? Okay. There's no new business. We will move on to the unfinished business, which is a discussion of the board policy manual, potential changes to the board policy manual. And okay, so here we are. Mark, would you like to review your changes?
Well, I wasn't sure how we wanted to proceed because what we have before us, as I understand it, is the attachment B. Is Brian, do I understand that to be your proposed revisions at this point?
If I may,
Well,
could I start with what staff did?
sure.
So just if I could, since the last meeting, there was some discussion. We got partway through the edits, but we hadn't really looked at everybody's. So staff took everybody's comments and put them into one version. And we also put together a staff recommended version, which includes most all the comments. There's a few exceptions where we put notes why they weren't included. And also because some of the stuff was commentary in nature, we just tried to, or we thought that the text needed a little massaging, that we were conveying what we thought was the intent of what someone might have been saying, but we just maybe smoothed over the text a little bit. But if there was commentary in nature, it's like, it can't be in the policy manual, et cetera, but it's like understood, it's that it helped color, if you will, the language that the person was using or the intent. And also, we also did some checking where there was a couple of instances where maybe it was, we needed to go out and check with legal on. So what you have is the two versions. Staff is asking you to recommend the staff recommended version to, or staff revisions to the board.
Okay, well, we'll go through the revisions that have all the comments in it, as I think that's the one that we'd probably want to discuss.
If I, and also if I could recommend just that, if everybody's had a chance to look at them, we could probably cut to the chase of which ones are the ones that.
Well, very possibly, but I'd like to make sure that we all have a chance to look at them. So so Mark, if you wanted to go through the first one starting on page 9, if you have any comments on those, or if you're okay to move on.
I'm still seeking a little clarification because as I understand it, the version that it might be most efficient to proceed from is the version starting on page 36, which is the so-called attachment B, because I still understand it.
Well,
that's what the staff has come up with as a recommendation.
Point of order.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through the one that has everybody's comments in it, because that's the one that has all the comments that we as committee members put into the process. We may even have other comments, because I do have a few others that as I went back through it and reread, that didn't make it in time. And that's the one that we're going to review.
I follow. I can work with you on that.
Okay, that'd be great.
But I'll have the same comment. I have no objection to anything that I currently see in either of those two versions. I'm open to discussion on any of those and might have comments on the discussion. But as an initial reaction, I was willing to accept those.
Okay. All right. So in that case, I'll go. If you don't have any other comments.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. The first comment that I had in there was, is there a way for us to define the general manager position to be inclusive of the fact that we could have acted interim, XYZ, what have you? I don't want to have to go back to this document every time we have a shift from interim to acting to general. And typically the way this is handled is through a definitional process where we upfront, we say the term general manager is inclusive of the following. Is that something that we could do?
Yes, I thought staff had taken that into account.
Okay.
We've done, we basically just changed it all to general manager.
Okay,
in
great.
our version, and not because general manager is inclusive.
Great. Okay, the next one here is on the suggestion about directors shall not relitigate issues that have been resolved. They shall not restate arguments that have been previously made, nor shall they seek to publicly overturn or undermine a previous board decision. Mark, I think that, and it says such actions are detrimental to the board's core responsibility, which is to make decisions and move on. Mark, I believe that's your suggestion.
True it is.
Would you like to discuss why you made such a recommendation?
Well, I did try to provide my motivation there. As I understand the board's role, it is to make decisions as efficiently and responsibly as possible. And so, I unless you have a specific question about what I said, I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, well, I just fundamentally disagree with it.
Okay.
I mean, that's got to be one of the most un-American and anti-democratic things I've ever seen someone propose.
Well,
The
that's
First
an honor.
Amendment is not suspended for directors during the political process. Well, I mean, that to me, that is such a gobsmackingly unbelievable thing to put out into public. And it actually goes against being able to have community members engage with their elected representatives as well. So no, that does not, I don't agree with that at all.
So I have a question. In the context of other committee meetings, I'm, for example, in a business context, I'm just curious how broad your objection is. Like, in other words, would you feel that that was a detriment in any decision-making meeting to have that kind of a stipulation?
Within the context of a public agency,
I understand you're
and the
making this one, yeah.
core aspect of political speech
Yeah.
protected by the First Amendment in all aspects. There's no exclusion in there I'm aware of that says you have free speech except for committee and board members of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District. I am perfectly happy to exercise my judgment as to when I take action on anything at a policy level or any other level related to what the board is acting upon. Especially policy and especially things that dive into the political.
Two questions. So first is the question I asked you. I mean, do you think that's not a useful stipulation in general in meetings, setting aside this public context?
Strike the whole thing out of the board policy manual.
I'm not asking what you want to do. I'm just asking if you, in the context of decision-making meetings in general, think that's a helpful directive.
Within the context of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District.
No, I'm not asking about the San Lorenzo Valley.
So as a general point of order, we are here to discuss the business of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District.
Yeah.
So within the context of that, that is not helpful at all.
Well, this is my second question is, okay, I guess what I'm reconsidering here is whether there's any point in discussing this. I think the free speech argument is completely bogus. I don't think it's relevant, and I don't think it applies. So I don't think this is a political meeting. I don't think that's the context of it. I really do think it's an action-oriented decision-making meeting. I think we disagree about that.
Well, I'm astounded that staff would put such a thing in their recommendation. I mean, I guess I can understand why they would, but let's be very specific about some examples. So as everybody knows, I oppose the rate increase process that we had here for a variety of policy-related decisions related to how it was done, the information that was provided to the public, the manner in which that information was provided to the public, and what I thought was very deceptive practices on the part of the board. It is my duty under the oath of office that I took to make that disagreement public, to go out into the public and advocate for a different outcome. Absolutely not only my responsibility, is my duty to do that. And anything like this that's in a board policy manual that would say, once the board has resolved the issue, where the board basically said, we agree to the rate increase, it's going out to the Prop 218, Director Foltz, sit down and shut up. No, that's not happening. And
Well-
if the board, if this passes, and the only way it's going to pass to get to the board is either Jamie's here at the next meeting, if we cover it then, or the staff puts it on the agenda without the approval of this committee, because we're not going to get a clear vote here, and bypass this committee and go to the board. If this is passed, I want to make it very clear. I will go out of my way to find something to disagree with and go public on this thing. Because that is my right and my duty and my responsibility. And there's going to be issues coming up here very shortly before the board that I will disagree with the board. And it is my absolute right to go to the public and publicly disagree.
So the question going through my mind is to what extent can we have a productive discussion here? I agree with you that we're not going to change our positions. We're going to be deadlocked 1-1. And I certainly knew when I suggested this that you were going to disagree with it. There are two parts to it. I mean, one is about repeating and relitigating. The other part is about going in public. I think you're objecting to both. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think you have a duty to, in other words, one of the things you just said was you'll go out of your way to find some issue to go public with. I don't think you have any duty to do that. That's just obstructionist. But I understand that you think you have a right to do that. I don't think you have unlimited free speech rights in the context of serving on the board. But I think we're going to have to leave it there.
Oh, please tell me what free speech rights I don't have.
You have, in society, you have free speech rights. But as a board member, if you can't abide by a decided, conclusion,
Are
then
you kidding?
that's not productively participating in the board, right?
Are you kidding me? So let me throw this back at you. In 2018, when we were elected to, the three of us were elected to the board, we made a number of what we perceived were very community-friendly, user-friendly amendments to the board policy manual. Guess who relitigated those a few years later? People off your group. So, hey, what does relitigation mean to you?
Oh, I see. That's a fair question. It means out of context. In other words, when there's an annual review of the policy manual, I think it's perfectly appropriate to revisit any previously decided issue. There's flexibility there. But when there's a decision that's been made, and then at the next meeting, if a board member wishes to restate all of their prior objections to that decision, I don't think that's helpful to anybody. So that's where we disagree. Yeah.
Even within the context of that topic being part of the agenda that is in front of the board.
Right.
Because, for example, budgets come
Right,
before the
right.
board quite a bit.
Right.
And so my repeating my opposition to the manner in which this district and this board handles its money is entirely appropriate within that context.
Well, this is, I think, partly just a question of what's an effective way to try to operate. This part of the manual is just trying to give guidance as to how will the board function most effectively. And I think repeating an argument again and again that hasn't resonated with people isn't an effective practice independent of anything else.
Well, that's your judgment.
Yeah, that's why I recommended that.
But that's not mine.
Right.
Okay, one of the other things that really troubles me about this is the message that's being sent to the community. That is, at some point in time, and I'm sure there'll be, howls of celebration, other people won't be on this board. We will be moving on at some point. The message that this sends to the community that is coming behind us that may not be quite as familiar with things as I am, for example, since I've been involved in this for many, many years, is thou shalt not vary from the narrative once that narrative has been established. To me, that sends a very chilling message into the community around the concept of free speech and what people can talk about. And so for the people that come after me, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons. And I wanted to make sure that we talked about this, and I know we're taking a fair amount of time, but to me, this goes to the core of what it is it means to be a public servant and why it is so important for groups within this valley, particularly, to somehow stifle or want to stifle people's ability to express opinions. It is absolutely horrible.
I'm only going to say that I don't think that's an appropriate characterization. Trying to stifle people's ability to express opinions. But I do think there's a time and a place to express them. So if that counts as stifling, then I understand where you're coming from.
Elected officials answer to the constituents. They do not answer to staff. They do not answer the other board members. They answer to their constituents. They are to do so in a way that is within decorum. I think we all agree on that. But within that decorum, I can still disagree. I can still say things that basically express how I believe about the topic at any time to anybody. I do not lose my rights by sitting on the board.
No, you don't.
Anyway,
You can. It's a matter of public record that, for example, you voted against X, and you can say, the board decided X for the following reasons. I voted against it for the following reasons. That's where it is.
Right, and I don't support the decision. Mr. Holloway, did you have any comment you wanted to make on this?
So
point of order, he gets one chance to comment on the whole deal, not every single point by point.
I do have within the board policy manual, particularly within my discretion, to allow for a subsequent comment. Mr. Holloway, would you proceed?
I think there's something in the manual about off-topic. I mean, off-topic is, are you leaving the meeting?
He is indeed.
Mr. Fruits?
Please proceed, Mr. Holloway.
Okay, I even think there's something, maybe there's something in the Brown Act about off-topic and repetitive. So I guess I agree with those concepts, that if you've made your point once, and really it's for the chair to kind of point out, maybe gently, that you're repeating yourself. You have, and this could apply to a committee member, or it could apply to a member of the public. So if you're off topic or repetitive, I mean, off topic, I think goes to the Brown Act. So I guess I'm not quite understanding the context here. You know, something gets passed at one meeting and then 2 weeks later, there's another meeting. Depending on what's on the agenda, I don't know. I mean, it might come up again. One of the things that occurred to me when you were discussing this is I started thinking about Board of Supervisors. So a few years ago, there was a surfing ban. The Board of Supervisors didn't vote for it, but there was a surfing ban. And within two weeks, it was gotten rid of. So it sort of sounds to me like you're saying, well, if you ban surfing, then you can't bring it up for a year. But in that case, there was pushback from the public and it was undone within 2 weeks. Another time with the Board of Supervisors, I remember there was some decision being made about Quail Hollow Park. This was a long time ago. And it turned out that there was so much pushback due to a board decision that within 2 weeks they took it up again. They just took it up all over again in 2 weeks because there had been so much pressure from the public. So and I guess I want to say relitigate. I don't like the word relitigate. I know a little bit about litigation, and it kind of involves going to court. So I don't think that's a good word. I think repetitive, certainly, I see your point there. And I guess if I get another chance, I have other things I wanted to say, but that was just to address that one
Thank you very much.
discussion.
Bob, can I just say, so I appreciated the comments there, and I totally appreciate your concern about relitigate. I think that's an appropriate objection. Just so I'm clear where I stand, and I'm not going to try to relitigate this discussion. I absolutely believe that any decision, can be revisited, for example, if it's re-agendized, and there's a fresh discussion on it. So I'm not trying to prevent that. I am suggesting as a matter of good practice for a deliberating body to not have people repeat things again and again and at length. And and that's the subjective part of that is I actually think I want to hear Bob's, positions and recommendations. So absolutely, I want those to be part of the discussion. I personally believe that in many cases, Bob could be more successful in making his case if he were not repeating the same arguments again and again, meeting after meeting. But that's just an aside. I'm just trying to say that it's not really directed. I mean, I think it might be in your interest to have something like this in the guidance, but you don't. So I'm going to leave it there. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to remove that item then? Well, we can't vote on that either. You're insisting on leaving it in.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it where it is right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to change the word relitigate?
But I'd be happy to have relitigate removed and replaced with something else for sure.
Maybe repetitious.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So the next one here is in handling complaints or inquiries from residents and property owners of the district. Said complaints shall be referred to the general manager and may be followed up by the board of directors.
What page is that on?
That would be on, sorry, having to flip between the two here to see where we're at. That is on page 13. Part of our duties as a board member is to listen to constituent concerns and to engage in conversation with the constituents about their concerns. I mean, that is part of the redress of grievances that we have as a responsibility. I wanted to get some clarification on what that meant from your perspective. Does that mean that we simply listen to the community and then we say, thank you very much, go talk to the general manager? Or do we engage with them in a more substantive conversation? Because as it stands right there, I can't follow that one either. Now, if the complaint is about a customer-related item, so our community has two roles. They're customers and they're owners of the district, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within the context of, I got a problem with my bill, I got a water leak, something like that, those complaints absolutely need to go to staff, right? Because those are things related to operational items. I don't do operations. I can't help them anyway, right? But a lot of the complaints and comments I get from constituents have to do more with policy related items. They don't understand this, they don't understand that. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And in those areas, it is part of my job, at least as I see it, to engage with the community about policy issues. And if there's something they're talking about that could be handled through a policy change, I'm going to want to try to push that through. And so it's that kind of a distinction that I think we need to be making here. Because the way this is written right now, it basically refers to everything. And I just don't think that's I don't think that's our job to basically just say, thank you very much, go talk somewhere else.
Just seeking clarification, are you referring to item number 6 here on the top of page? 13?
Item number 7, sorry.
Number 7,
Yeah,
sorry.
in handling complaints or inquiries from residents, property owners of the district, said complaints should be referred to the general manager and may be followed up by the board of directors.
And do I understand that you're suggesting adding, a certain category of complaints to limit that scope?
Well, I'm suggesting here that we might need some clarification around what that's supposed to be. Because my sense of this manual is it's being written in a way, and this goes to the staff recommendation as well, to constrain the board members as much as possible. Whereas my view of a board member's duties are very clear. Operations, we don't handle. Policy, we do. And anything that doesn't make that distinction causes what I would say ambiguity that then allows for someone to say, well, hey, you aren't following the code of conduct. And since we've already had examples of personal attacks on me in a board meeting by now former staff and other board members, I'm highly concerned about anything that's going to open up a conversation that says, well, you're violating the code of conduct, therefore we're going to do what? Sanctions. Because I think that's just a complete waste of time of the board anyway. So yeah, I have some concerns about that. Would you be open to the concept of either striking this or striking it particularly out of this area, which is the code of conduct, or expanding it to more clearly define the duties of operations versus policy?
So help me out here, because 6 and 7 appear to overlap. Do you think I'm misreading them?
Well, they could be. One is if we have questions, I took number 6 to be, and this could be that we need more clarification there too. I took 6 to mean that if I had a question about these items that are listed here, and it may be other items, it could be including but not limited to, should consult with or, refer directly to the general manager. I took this number 6 as being more board related, and I took number 7 as being more public related. That could be wrong, but that's the way that I read it.
May I make a comment?
Please.
Sure. Yeah.
So if a person from the public comes to you as a board member and they're really upset because their water, they had a leak and they don't believe that it was their fault, is there anything that you can do about that? You can make them feel better, and you can explain to them that I'll be happy to send you in the right direction. And I think that's what this is all about. You can talk to anybody you want to, but we're the people that can answer the question. It's like I said before, it's like I have a leak. Should I call the water district or go to Facebook? It's the same sort of a thing. I have a leak. Should I go to the water district or to a board member? It's the water district, and you should be directing people to the water district, because you don't always know the steps that we go through. If you have a water leak and you want to protest it, we have a very clear way of doing that. And we can explain to them the process, where they can go to find the forms, how they can go to the board and speak if they need to. That's all we're saying. We're not trying to stop you from being able to speak to your constituency. That's not what this is about. This is just making sure that everybody understands that these are things that need to go to the district manager to be sent out to whoever, whatever group needs to take care of it, be it operations or customer service or anything like that. It's all a matter of making sure that, you know, you still get your feel good, you know, you talk to them. I'll make sure that the district manager knows that you spoke to me and, you know, whatever, but it's the district that needs to answer the questions so that they're getting the correct information and not getting the runaround, because that's what it feels like sometimes. People say, well, Bob told me that I should have blah, 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 or Gail told me that, you know, we get those kind of calls.
So as I said earlier, operational things related to bills, disputes on the bills, leaks, that sort of thing, those are operational issues, and those should be resolved by staff. But I get a lot of questions about things that are policy related.
Specifically.
Well, for example, the most recent one was around the rates. In fact, the district mailer was putting out what I thought was very bad information, very misleading information. And I would have people ask me about that, and I would tell them a different piece of information that was based on the analysis that I did. And so under this, the way this is written, it's not clear as to whether or not that would be considered a code of conduct violation. Because if we talk about anything related here to finance, for example, which is part of 6, and even, you know, complaints, because people would be complaining about the rates going up, I'm supposed to forward it off to the general manager. No, so I think what I'm hearing here is that we're in agreement that there's sort of operational things that really are within the purview of staff, that we should just basically say, please go follow this. If they have some, I mean, I hate cutting people off. As you say, Holly, it's sort of not a great look to say, someone says, I got to complain about a leak, and for me to just say, okay, you got to go here, because that's not the constituent service part of our job. So I do listen to people. I do talk to them about it. I ask some questions, and I say, okay, at the end of all this, you know, please go talk to Holly. If they said, hey, I can't get anything with staff, then I say, go talk to the district manager. And if they said, hey, I can't get anything about the district manager, then I say, go talk to Jeff in this case, or Mark, or whoever it is, and say, get it on the agenda if you want to pursue it, because that's the process to go through. But policy related things, no. I feel no compunction to refer people to the general manager exclusively. During my conversation, I may say, hey, this is my opinion. It may be the opinion of the board, it may not be. If you want additional information, you can talk to the general manager, talk to staff. But this is what I'm saying to you as a board member. And it's entirely up to them as to whether they do that or not.
Just quickly, given what you both have said, if I followed it, would it address staff concerns and Bob's concerns equally if it said in handling operational complaints?
Well, that's where I was going, Mark.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, I think if we make 6 and 7 kind of deal with individual topics, one being operational, one being policy, and we have different language for that, then I think we're probably in a good place. I don't have the language for it right now. I would have to propose something, which I'd be happy to do.
Would that meet your objective, Holly? If it were,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. By the way, what are the sanctions that are available for the violations of code of conduct. Does anyone know?
Where is that?
Right there.
Oh, sanctions.
It
It's
does say
K. There's sanctions of the violations, and I have been accused of violating it. And the sanctions imposed shall depend upon the severity of violation or violations. What are those sanctions?
May I?
Does anybody know?
I know that one of the sanctions is to be removed from all committees.
Well, that sounds more like a promise. Okay, so removal from committees. Maybe we ought to sort of spell out what those sanctions are.
They're not mentioned.
Can you say what page you're on? I'm sorry. I lost it.
Yeah, it's on page, oops.
Page 13 still, letter L.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah,
It's right under number 9.
yeah, it's yeah.
Okay, what was another one? There was another sanction.
Well, I can tell you, you can censure somebody under Robert's Rules of Order. That happened to a water board member over in Santa Clara County. If they breach confidentiality of closed session, that's a legal issue. I mean, they could get sued, I guess. And then they have to pay attorney's fees if they lost. So that's a pretty severe sanction.
Okay, great. I'll probably want to suggest we put something in there about that. Okay, let's see here. Staff recommendation. Okay, that was in. Okay, the next one down is the duties. I see we added the including the board policy manual, which was missing. Comment here, set fees, rates, and charges for district services. So some of those fall under Prop 218 and some don't, correct?
Right.
So it's too broad to say that we can set fees. We can set fees within the legal boundaries that we have available to us, one of which is Prop 218. And so I wanted to add some language in around that, clarifying that it's not just a broad power that we have to do that unilaterally at any time. Does that make sense, Mark? Yeah, okay.
So set rates, fees, and charges for district services subject to Proposition 218 and what other things?
Well, that would be a question for the attorney. Prop 218 is the one that we deal with most, right? So.
And board resolution, ordinance, those are other ways to change the.
Yeah, it isn't so much I want to go through what the process is there outside of Prop 218, because that limits our ability to unilaterally do things. Anything outside of Prop 218, we just can do, subject to the board voting on it, right? So, okay, but we're in general agreement on that. Which is good. Let's see here. Okay. The next one down here is, I think that I wanted to talk about was,
Can you give a page number?
sorry, yes. It's on executive functions on page 15.
we did speak to the attorney regarding that. And that has been removed.
Okay, great.
She agreed that not all powers are delegatable.
Well, I mean, the way it was written is we could just sort of, go on vacation.
Yeah,
Right,
right.
so, yeah.
So any should be removed. You are correct.
Okay. The other reason that I had some objections to the code of conduct around what to do with community complaints or feedback or what have you, is that we're also dealing with it a little bit here as well. And so from my point of view, I don't necessarily like duplication inside of a policy if we can avoid it. Now, there may be reasons that we cannot avoid it, but I like to try to avoid it as much as possible. And so one of the questions I had is whether this process here, which does sort of expand a little bit more in terms of how complaints are to be handled, would it be better to bring that down here? Or is there value in having it in both locations?
To the quasi judicial.
Yeah, the quasi judicial functions, correct.
Yeah, I see what you're saying here. That wish I was more familiar with that may have been moved in the staff recommendation, but if not, I will make note of that as well.
Well, the part about clarifications and the rest of it within the context of the code of conduct is still in the previous page we discussed about. This did incorporate some of the changes that I suggested, which were to be a little bit clearer about the language involved in the process. And I guess what I'm saying here is I think we want to take a very close look at harmonizing these in a way that doesn't have duplication or use different language that may be confusing. That is, again, the language needs to be consistent when you're talking about the same topic. This one also does clarify that it doesn't prohibit or deter a member of the public from contacting any member of the board of directors and or appearing before us regarding actions of the board of directors, program services, or impending considerations of board of directors. So, I mean, it's broad enough that it's very clear there that we have a lot of leeway to communicate with our constituents. Whereas the earlier one tightens it.
Yeah,
If
the
you would
spirit of
agree?
what you're saying
Yeah,
is
okay.
fine.
All right, so we do need to work a little bit on harmonizing that aspect. Bruce, we have about 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure you have one more opportunity to speak during this meeting if you wished about this. If you could do it right now, that way we'll get in before I have a hard stop at 4. So,
Okay, there's a couple things on page 17 and 18. So at the bottom of page 17, it's talking about quorum and voting requirements. And then it says a director abstaining is considered absent. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. A director abstaining due to a conflict of interest does not count toward a quorum. Okay, that's not really abstaining, that's recusing. And when a director recuses himself because of a conflict of interest or whatever reason, they need to step down from the dais.
Correct.
And if it's a closed session, they need to leave. But my understanding is even if someone recuses themselves and they step down from the dais at an open meeting, then they can participate just like any member of the public. So I think there's some confusion here about absent, abstain, and recuse. And these are very important. So I think there's confusion here. Now there's another place where I guess I can't see it, but I saw it last night. There's a place where it talks about a quorum, and a quorum is 3 for the board of directors. And there's sort of a comment that says, if you get down to 3, then everything has to be unanimous. Well, that's sort of true, but it turns out, so there's an attorney general opinion. I mean, some legislator asked the attorney general for a board like SLB Water Board or the Board of Supervisors that have 5. According to Robert's Rules of Order, 3 is a quorum, and you can pass a motion by 2 to 1. But that's not what the Attorney General said. The Attorney General said you always need 3. But that Attorney General opinion also refers to this 300-year-old English case that's called Rex versus Foxworthy. And in that case, the conclusion was that abstentions count toward the majority. So they count toward a quorum and they count toward a majority. Typical way the abstention comes up, the most typical way that I know of, is if a body is voting on the minutes from a previous meeting and somebody did not attend the meeting. So they want to abstain because they say, I don't know anything about this. So if you got down to 3 directors, and one of them didn't go to the previous meeting where you got the minutes on the agenda, then you can approve the minutes by a vote of 2 to nothing to 1 abstention and then 2 absences. So it's not really unanimous. I wouldn't call it unanimous when you have 2 in favor and 1 abstain, but that meets the quorum requirement, and that you can pass a motion with 2 to nothing. I think you can also pass a motion 2 to 1 with 1 abstention. The abstention counts towards the 2, and it's not a 3 to 1 vote. It's 2, 1, 1, and I guess in that case there would be 1 absent. And on page 18, it talks about the ayes and nays. The ayes and noes, I guess. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it. But it says the ayes and noes need to be recorded. And I think this is a good thing to bring up since we have a brand new district secretary. Under the Brown Act, ayes, noes, abstentions, and absences, all 4 need to be noted on every single vote. Now, I'll admit, if the minutes say so-and-so was absent at the beginning, and then there's nothing else for the whole minutes, then you understand throughout that meeting, 1 person was absent. So you don't need to say it over and over again, they were absent, they were absent, they're absent. So I agree with that. But as far as abstentions, they do need to be noted. And they're distinct from ayes and noes. So where the manual says ayes and noes, that's not enough under the law.
Excuse me, Bruce, would you be willing to send Mark and I the reference that you referred to and staff as well?
I'll try to remember that.
That would be fantastic.
There's a place where it talks about what the board, on page 14, it talks about things the board can do, and it talks about hiring a general legal counsel. But I'm pretty sure the board hires all the legal counsels. So if the general counsel says, hey, this isn't my specialty, we need something as specialist, then the board would approve that too. So no, it doesn't matter how many legal counsels there are. I think the board approves them all, not just the general legal counsel.
You would agree with that as well, Mark? I agree.
And I guess one more thing I wanted to say. There's been meetings here, board meetings for the last year or 2, where the chair will say, I want a motion before public comment. And I guess I just have to say, as a member of the public, I feel like that's a slap in the face if the chair is saying, let's get a motion on the table before you've even heard anyone here. Once you've heard from the public, then you've got to close on what you're going to do with the item. And so I think that's when it would be appropriate to have a motion. But to insist, for the chair to insist that we need a motion on the table before we go to public comment, that is a slap in the face at anyone from the public that wants to participate.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I think a number of those we did agree would be worthwhile. Unfortunately, I do have a hard stop at 4, so I'm going to have to bail here and adjourn the meeting. But I think this has been a great conversation. Whether we agree or not, doesn't matter.
I'm with you, yeah.
We're having a conversation.
Yeah.
And about strongly held beliefs. And that is part of what I think our job is here, to make sure that that gets communicated into the public. Thank you all for coming. And we're adjourned.